You alright, guys? I'm the world around you, and this is Pause for Thought on Fresh Old FM. Now, I can't believe this is going to be the first dedicated episode to this, and if I'm honest, I think I've done pretty well so far to not just ramble on about this sort of stuff every week. And it's got to be obvious, though, isn't it? Obviously, I'm talking about aliens. Now, there are loads of different types of aliens, but this week we're gonna focus on just one type. We're gonna focus and talk purely about the Nordics, who are also known as the Tall Whites. The most well-known one that comes to mind was called Valiant Thor, and there's a good chance that that's what Thor, from the Marvel comics, was based on, rather than the stories of the Nordic god Thor. I mean, maybe it was a combination of the two, because he did have that hammer and that, but he had the long hair and stuff, and there is quite a lot of crossovers between them sort of things. But what if these stories of ancient gods are some form of redaction? Is that the word, redaction? Where, the idea where someone's gone back through history and changed elements of it and reworded things and blocked bits out and changed elements, removed elements, that sort of idea. Like, what if that's what the ancient god stories are, like the Nordic stories, the ancient Egyptian stories? Just to get you thinking just straight away off the straight, it's going to be one of them sort of weeks, rather than last week where it was purely facts. Well, I say purely facts. It was predominantly fact last week when we did Henry Avery, the Pirate King. Anyway, maybe all of that, though, the idea of the redactions and that, maybe that adds to Fomenko's idea that history is shorter than what we're led to believe. And why wouldn't it be? In some ways, it's easy to see how we are less evolved than ants and bees, because they all work in unison in like a hive mind as a team, like a true hive mind. Wolves as well, wolves work naturally as a team too. Most animals seem to work as a team. Fucking fish, mate, look at fish. Fish are notorious for it, mate. They move around in schools, and sometimes them schools will look like solid blocks. Birds and all. Like, when they fly around in them massive groups using the electronic waves of the earth. That's truly living in unison, innit? Living with each other and living with the planet. But these are supposedly earth-dwelling creatures, like the birds, the bees, I'm not that, you need me to talk to you about that, I'm not the guy to talk to you about the birds and the bees, innit, but fucking, you know what I mean, ants and that, they're of Earth, definitely of Earth, as far as we're aware, unless they've all been, like, collected and dumped here, which is possible, like this is some form of weird intergalactic zoo, or maybe we don't live in a planet at all, maybe this is just a massive exhibit, because realistically, if a bear's born in a cage, it doesn't know there's a world outside of what it can see from its cage, so this could be a cage. Anyway, that's not that interesting in comparison to a creature of truly mythical proportions. The Tall Whites. So, they can reach up to about 8 feet in length, 8 feet in height, over a span of 800 years though, so it does take them a long time to grow. Though they tend to be around 6 foot for about 400 years, which I don't get how that works. Like, they hit 6 foot and then stick at that for a few hundred years, and then so as they get taller, what I read was as they get taller, they start to then have organ failure and slowly die. But what's mad though, before all that happens, they can run at about 40 miles an hour, which is mad really, because that's twice the speed that you can drive past a special needs school, for special needs children. So these are said to have guided humanity at times, but we've just learned that they can endanger the lives of children with learning difficulties. So what is it we're to believe? Like, are they good or are they bad? Anyway, here's a song to start the show off. This is Chris Webby with As I Go. So, the Tall Whites are said to communicate with humans, but the voices sound like a dog barking. So, is that why that most of us have dogs? Has some clever guy or clever girl come up with the idea of normalising pet dogs so that people who hear dogs yelping out of their window just assume that they're some form of canine rather than an alien visitor? Others say that their voices sound a lot like birds, and we always hear birds in the morning as well, and you don't really hear dogs barking in the morning. You tend to hear dogs barking at night, so they've got us covered on all bases really there, haven't they? Now, could it be that birds aren't actually real? Not that birds are drones, but fake. Like, they're fake, or they're engineered creatures to try and convince people that what they are hearing is nature and not the natural sounds of the Nordics. Detaching us, from our so-called creators. as our creators, that there is a way that they kind of resemble what is said in the Bible. In Genesis, in the Bible, it states that Adam was built in God's image. And we see ourselves as Adam. We got 4 fingers and a thumb on each hand. And that's what the tall whites have and all. They've also got thin, long, white hair that kind of looks like how vampires have been depicted in the past. Though instead of black, dead eyes, like your favourite porn star, or red eyes like the end of a scene featuring your favourite porn star, the tall whites are said to have piercing blue eyes, like your favourite porn star. They are used to living on a planet in a different system, though, and it means they experience gravity very, very differently to us, which, coincidentally, means that they walk weird, kind of like your favourite porn star. Now, another way we can connect them to the creation of man is by linking them to Africa, the so-called cradle of civilization. Well, the tall whites are said to have always possessed a piece of technology that allows humans to understand what it is they're saying, but this device has to be close to the human, within like a foot or so distance-wise, and to understand the speech of the tall white, it's said that the people must be sighted onto the sound, like have the face turned almost away to the sound. Now that sounds a lot like a phone, doesn't it? Like a mobile or a telephone. So what if all those phone calls from, African princes offering the riches to the recipients of phone calls were actually just tall whites trying to make people's lives better? They're said to guide and help humanity, and one of the best ways to do that would be to gift millions of pounds or millions of dollars to people all around the world to upset the balance of power. It also brings the Wachowski brothers into it, though, a little bit with the Matrix. Like when Agent Smith explains how they tried to make it nice for the humans, but they didn't like it. Like how the humans wouldn't accept it, and how the humans need misery as well, or something to that effect. It's a few years since I've watched the film, but it's something along the lines of, we've tried this before, Mr. Anderson, and it was supposed to be, we tried making it nice for you and pleasant, but you didn't like it. We had to make it miserable. And I feel like I might be oversimplifying their technology, but obviously I've never experienced it, not that I'm aware of anyway. Now, the technology is said to project the voices, which, realistically, I think that's what a phone does. It takes the vibrations and then it magics them over to the other end of the world. A weird thing I do know about, though, is an event called the Carrington event. Long story short, some form of solar flare hit the Earth, and that caused phone lines to ring and made electrical devices function without actual input. Now, that's proof there that things that can be things that are outside of our control can affect phones or telegrams or whatever it was at the time that it did affect. I know I said I know it, but I can't remember it all off the top of my head. I wasn't planning on going into it, but it was the idea that the sun erupted or something, and it sent a flare or solar activity towards the Earth, and that messed with the electromagnetic pulses on the Earth and the natural electric within the Earth, and wirings and wires fused to things, and operating boxes for phones or telegrams or whatever the fuck they were called. Them things that they fucking tap and would send messages by tapping a piece of metal to each other. They started sending random messages to one another. Anyway, speaking of phone calls though, when I was about 7 or 8 years old, I got into trouble with the police for leaving prank phone calls on a classmate's phone, or his house phone, because it turned out that the girl whose house I was at the time, she'd been leaving a load of messages which were sort of emulating sex lines that she'd somehow been privy to. Now, we were both the same age, and obviously that's a harrowing story. Kind of funny because the police are involved, and you're 7 or 8 and you're doing prank phone calls and the police get involved. Terrifying, to be honest, at the same time. Fucking terrifying at that age. Really freaked me out. But obviously how she'd found out about all that stuff is kind of fucked. But my calls were just swearing and that, and weird threats. But most of the actual swear words that I'd said were bleeped out by me. Like, oh, you're bleeping this, you're bleeping that, I'm going to bleep him, bleep. Which is mental. But I was 7, like, there was a weird night in it. But I don't know how I got here, though. How did I get here? Where was I? I was Carrington event. Fucking... I don't know. I've just got kids written down after me notes about phones. I've just wrote kids. Shit. Yeah. It's not actually related to the phones thing. The children of the tall whites are said to be extremely frail, like proper frail, like and easy to bruise, which It kind of makes me wonder if that's why rich people get celebrities to fuck kids. Like, are they trying to see if they bruise easily or something? And if they do, are they then taken away and kept hostage? Or are they then maybe gifted to the tall whites? The Nordics are said to love to procreate, the Nordic aliens, but there's lots of stories throughout history of aliens, gods and angels having sex with people, so maybe all the kiddie fiddling is a way to find the halflings, which sounds derogatory. And I don't mean it to sound derogatory, but I don't know another word for it. Like, to say mongrels doesn't sound right neither. Demigods, we'll call them demigods. That makes it simpler, because they're sort of, we're saying the gods and godlikes. They're half god, half human, half alien, half human. I'm not saying that these aliens are the gods, but for the sake of the kids, just to, let's big up the kids a bit. Let's call them demigods, which in reality makes it worse for the ones that aren't actually the demigods, because then they're just weak kids that got diddled by some TV presenters in the 80s. What if that's why everyone's got stories of kids moving in and out of school? Sort of these nomadic children that used to join your school and leave your school. And them kids would normally fight as well. They'd normally have a good scrap when they would join the school, and most of the time that they'd be in school, they'd be scrapping. Almost like they were looking for the weak kids. Or maybe they were trying to prove that they weren't weak. Weirdly, I've also heard a lot of these kids were called Tyler, which is pretty strange as well. So maybe they don't have that many names, or the Nordics aren't aware of that many human-sounding names, or maybe the name Tyler is easy to say because maybe it sounds a little bit like a bird and a little bit like a dog barking. I'm not too sure, but I know that I do remember it, and I remember seeing a meme that said a lot of kids called Tyler who had a kid in the class called Tyler who they never met. Now, I had that in primary. Did you? If you did, let me know in the Discord, innit? I'll be in the Discord. Let me know if you had a Tyler that you never met. And we had one join our primary school, like I say, and he never turned up to class, never met him. No one ever met him. No one knew who he was. Then we had another one in secondary school and all, and I'm not sure if he stayed the entire time. I'm honestly not sure. I can't properly remember him, which kind of adds to my idea that he may have been some form of alien as well, because now we can't remember them. We know the name was there, but we don't remember Tyler. None of us remember any of these Tylers, but we know that there was a Tyler there, but we don't know what he looked like, who he was, where he lived, who his parents were, what they did for a job, what they did for money. We haven't got a clue. And it's freaking me out a bit though now, thinking about all of this, because what if that means that I'm the Tyler? What if I was maybe, I was also Tyler? Wasn't the character in Fight Club called Tyler? And he was mental, the guy called Tyler in that. He was mad, wasn't he? He kept seeing this other bloke as a hallucination. And, there we go, there's another link that we've got there with Fight Club, Tylers and Tall Whites. Fucking Starbucks, mate. A Starbucks cup in every scene in fucking Fight Club. There was a Starbucks cup in every scene. And that's the place, probably the only place on earth where you're guaranteed to be able to find a tall white. Is Starbucks a way to normalise the words tall white, when really all we really know is that the true coffee, we all know, we're all fully aware though that the true and only true coffee is double drop coffee. And then it's mad how it all fits together. Weird, isn't it? Anyway, let's have another song. This is Invocation by Common. Even though it seems that they want a lot of kids, the tall whites seem to be very protective of the kids, of the children that they do have, almost like they need them for something. Could it be that it's an invasion of some sort? Are they preparing for an invasion? Have they already invaded here and they're sort of using here to stockpile their own children so that they can invade other planets or another star system? I'm only saying this because from my readings, the females are supposedly hardly ever seen, and the children are supposed to be even rarer to witness. However, the mothers are said to dedicate their entire lives to the children in order to serve them and make sure that they're okay. Now, the way that they protect themselves and their children, that seems mental too, but at the same time, it seems, kind of familiar. It's a trope that's used in many TV shows. Two of my favourite TV shows, actually. The tool they use is described as being like a pencil. Now, if you think of a tool that's like a pencil, that's a screwdriver, innit? Now, who can we think of that has a screwdriver, constantly has a screwdriver with them in a TV show? Go on, we can all think of it, can't we? Yeah, fucking Psycho Paul, mate, from Ideal. And he hangs around with Cartoonhead as well, who was someone who didn't speak, just like the tall whites don't speak. or at least, they don't speak in an audible way to us. Kind of, that's a little link there. Like, they speak telepathically, and you understand what Cartoon Head's saying because he nods or he shakes his head and stuff, or sort of shimmies side to side ever so slightly. But the other TV show that's like this, with some form of screwdriver in, is Doctor Who. The Time Lords have weapons that are referred to as sonic screwdrivers, and these weapons can hypnotise and subdue enemies, just like the ones in Doctor Who to a certain extent. Now, we can link these weapons to other things, though. We can loosely link it to Dialatov Pass. Now, for those that don't know, just as a quick summary, Dialatov Pass was an event where I think it was about 5 or 6 people from the Eastern Bloc of Europe, I want to say Russia, but it may not have actually been within Russia. They went camping, and it was freezing cold, and then they ended up finding them bollock naked all over the place, and the tent had been ripped from the inside out, and it looked like they'd been attacked by some form of creature, but they were all dead, bollock naked. Some people think it was hypothermia, but some people think they just went skinny dipping. Some people believe it was a Menk attack, a Menk being like the local form of the abominable snowman. Others think it could have been a secret testing of microwave weaponry that confused the campers and sent them off into the wilderness. Now, could this have been where humans were testing the technology gifted to them by the tall whites, which is said to have been happening at this point now, we're in, as of today, for at least 60 years. Though it's said to have been happening between the Americans and the tall whites, but in reality, to a species of alien, let's say, that's from another galaxy, what would the difference between a Russian and an American really be? Because if they could learn English relatively easily, it'd be ridiculous to believe that they wouldn't be able to also learn Russian. It'd also be pretty silly to assume that they would work exclusively with one group of people who, let's say they'd travel all this way, but only deal with one group or one person. It seems very, very strange, albeit kind of clever, because then it's easy to deny their existence because not everyone knows about them. So I understand that, but it'd be kind of like, going all that way to just, like, imagine if you went to see your mum and dad at their house, but you only ever spoke to your dad when you were there, you just ignored your mum, or travelling halfway around the world and you only look at things that are on the left-hand side of the road, only look at the side of the road with the even house numbers. It's just something you wouldn't do, innit? It doesn't make sense to us, but maybe that's why I've never been visited by the aliens, because they would think, well, he thinks it's weird to only look at odd numbers of houses, whereas the aliens are like, well, we don't actually accept that there are the number 4, 6, 8 and 10. We accept the number 2, but we don't accept the numbers 4, 8, 6 and 10. So why would we even acknowledge them? We're not going to even look at that side of the road, and we're not even really into houses. We only really believe in bungalows because they tend to have like higher ceilings in them, don't they? And with them being 8 foot tall and quite frail, they probably won't want to be going up and down flights of stairs. This episode is brought to you by Fat Pete's Prints, which is a little Etsy shop where you can get you can't get anything to do with tall whites, but there is a picture of a grey on a t-shirt, only on a black t-shirt, I think and it's a blue grey, not as in like the colour. I mean, it's not like you're having an argument with your missus in B&Q over what colour that tin of paint actually is. Nothing is, it's nothing as sinister as that. It's just a grey, but it's blue, like a grey alien. But I don't think I've released the episode about greys yet, so you might be a bit confused as to what this means. How there's tall whites? Well, there's also greys. They're a different species of alien. But anyway, Fat Pete won't want this. Fat Pete wants me to tell you that you can use the discount code DEADRAT to get some money off. I think it was 15% off of shirts, posters. One of the posters on there is of a woman bending over, and she's in very small denim shorts, and she's rubbing a banana on her arsehole. So if you're into that, you can get that cheaper. Put on your bedroom wall. Stare at that. You can't see you can't see her arsehole, nothing like that. It's just a weird poster. There's other weird stuff on there. There's fellas using inhalers. They can get as big stickers for your wall. I think they're a bit expensive, But he's got the fake nanomagnets, mate. They're probably the game changer on there. The fake nanomagnets. The moon magnets are pretty good and all. So are the eyeball magnets, and you can get 15% off on them and all from Fat Pete's Prints. Yeah, see, there'll be a link underneath in the description for this.
What else have I got to tell you? No other sponsors. But keep an eye on my socials, because I'll have an announcement probably on Wednesday. So if you're listening to this on the 12th, which is the day I think this comes out, the 12th of June 2023, for those of you in the future, hopefully you already know about this. Maybe I don't even have it anymore, but there will be an announcement on Wednesday. Something new, quite exciting. But again, that's got nothing to do with Fat Pete's Prints, who's brought you this episode. So thank you to Fat Pete's Prints. Go and have a look at the stuff they've got. There's some good t-shirts about animal abuse. Yeah, sort of encouraging it in a sort of tongue-in-cheek way, which is nice. You know, a bit different. None of this stop animal testing shite that you see, like girls with blue hair carrying round town. You know, that black bag with a couple of hares boxing each other. Not like that where it says stop animal. It's just got a picture of a woman holding a belt over a Labrador, and it says you can't beat a good dog. And that dog kind of looks scared, innit? There's another one that says animal cruelty, you can't beat it. I should probably check to see what new stuff's on there, so I'm not just telling you about the same stuff from there every week. But it's good, innit? The funny shirts. Questionable, but good. You know, it's worth getting. And, you know, join me Patreon as well, mate. But I'm not going to keep you here for ages. I'll let you get back. So Fat Pete's Prints. Not fat as in that sick, mate. No, you know, not all street PH. Nothing like that. Fat Pete as in like Fat Dave, Fat Jill, Fat Steve, Fat Diana. You know, like you know, as in like she's fatter, as in she's a big girl. You know, hefty, fat like that, mate. FAT. Fat Pete's Prints. Anyway, the link will be underneath. I'll let you crack on with this. I hope you're learning something.
Anyway, they do come here to learn though, and if you want to learn, surely you'd want as many sources as possible, which is quite rich for a guy that's only read through 3 very fucking specific websites to find this sort of information for this week's show. But you know what I'm saying, though? You wouldn't travel all that way just to speak to one group of people, innit? Like, why wouldn't they go and introduce microwave weaponry to the Russians whilst also, like, speaking to the Americans and introducing them to different types of technology? But maybe they're already quite smart, though. Maybe they don't need to learn, and maybe they understand that they just need to play to the egos of world leaders to make them feel more important than they already are. And that's a small price to pay, I guess, for whatever it is that they're trying to accomplish. If all they've got to do is tickle the egos of some world leaders, and then they get whatever it is they want out of our planet. And I mean, we don't know what it is they're trying to get done, but I bet that they work towards it relatively slowly, because the orbit of their planet that they're said to come from is said to be longer than ours, a lot longer than ours. So they experience time much, much differently because of the way that their planet spins. So what makes them seem relatively normal, though, at the same time as what makes them seem so odd to us, I guess, is that they sleep. So they sleep just like we'd sleep. Like, you don't really imagine like a reptilian lizard sleeping, or a grey, because greys are supposed to be like fucking made in factories by the reptilians and the tall whites, and so there you don't really see them as living ones, I guess, which is probably awful to say. If there's any, you know, if there's a grey listening somewhere, he's thinking, oh fucking hell, you know, I thought this guy was sound, but he's just a fucking dickhead. He's spreading lies about us. That's not my intentions, innit? I don't know why I'm trying to fucking... I don't know why I'm trying to defend myself against what seems to be an imaginary creature. But their days on that planet, anyway, for the tall whites, is 2 days, 2 of our days. So when they're here, they'll be awake for 2 of our days, like full 24 hours, and then they'll sleep for 48 hours after being awake for 48 hours, instead of sleeping every 18 hours or so like we do, which makes them seem quite regulated and, in a way, less intimidating. But that could be just to lull us all into a false sense of security. It makes us think that they'll be sleeping at some point, and if we wanted to, maybe we could overpower them. Maybe that little voice in my head tells me that, you know, we'd be wrong to do that, though. I don't know if it does for you, like it does for me. It makes me think that would be a really silly thing to do, that to sneak up on a little advanced species and think, oh, he's asleep now, so I'll creep up on him and I'll have him with this claw hammer in the back of the head. Bruise now, you cunt. Bruise now. Fucking bruise now. Bruise now. You know, it'd be a bit fucking psychotic as well, really, because I think of the things you could learn from him. And why would you want to break him with a hammer as well, really? You'd want to put him to sleep with some form of chemical so that you could take him apart piece by piece and learn what's on the inside of him, or somehow torture him to get more information out of him. Again, not great advice, but like they're supposed to be clever, innit? So would they fall for torture? I'm not sure. And they're a lot more advanced than us, and they're also telepathically connected to us as well. So unless we had brain waves like Fry from Futurama, we wouldn't stand a chance of sneaking up on them, really, would we? Even if we could float, mate, they'd know we were coming. Like, could the race of floating brains that was in Futurama be a representation of the tall whites and their superior intellect? Because they're even weak to Nibbler, mate, which is a pet in Futurama. That's Leela's pet. Just how I was suggesting that dogs are a way of protecting us, or at least buffering us from the influence of the tall whites. See, fucking... Even though that, like, they can speak to us without actually speaking, they can't teleport here. According to some, they travel in these large black craft. So, could this be what the Black Knight satellite actually is? You know what I was talking about the other week? The signals that I spoke of the other week in that episode, they were picked up by Tesla sometime in the late 1890s, and the Carrington event that affected the world was in the mid 1800s, so maybe like 40 years before that. That might seem unrelated, but seeing as though that they supposedly can't teleport here, maybe they've always been sort of intertwined with the history of our planet, and they came here when they got news of the solar storm hitting the planet. So after all, you know, if they've created it, surely they'd want to have some, they'd have some form of vested interest, surely, in us or in the planet and its inhabitants, whether it be in the way of an experiment or if they're more like the Anunnaki are supposed to be, and they just want to collect the gold from the earth or whatever that metaphorical gold actually is. It's hard to tell exactly what it is they're doing here, but one thing does seem pretty clear, and that's that they're not farming us for our meat. Though some believe that there are interdimensional aliens, or at least these invisible beings on Earth that want to eat us and our alleged negative energies, it seems fair to assume that the tall whites don't want to eat us, as there is no record at all of them ever eating meat. In fact, it's said that they eat something along the lines of a mushroom pudding, which sounds pretty dirty, to be honest. Like, I wouldn't want to eat that. Like, I don't get me wrong, I like miso soup and I do like mushrooms. Personally, I wouldn't want them in a pudding. I'll leave you a little tip here, yeah, Jimmy, if you're listening. Fucking, you do your food bits, don't you, every now and then. I'm not treading on your toes, bro, but if you want to cook mushrooms, the perfect way for me, what I would say to cook mushrooms, is to get like a quarter of a block of butter, throw that in a pan, cook that down so it goes into like a fucking juice, and then throw your chopped up mushrooms in there with fucking a couple tablespoons of black pepper and zest of a whole lemon and a load of lemon juice. Mix it in there and cook it on a low heat for about 20 minutes, 25 minutes, whilst you're cooking your fry up. They'll be the fucking nicest mushrooms you've ever had. And because you've ate all that butter after you've ate it, you sort of can sit on the couch and you don't feel bad about not doing anything for the day because you've sort of incapacitated yourself with all the butter. But that's the only way that I would want to eat these mushrooms. That's what I'm saying. I lost myself there. I mean, take the recipe, you know, give it a go. Let me know what you think. Anyway, the area of the Earth that the tall whites are said to reside in is in America, and it's Nellis Air Force Base, according to one whistleblower anyway, and they claim to have also seen the tall whites collecting seeds. And I wouldn't want to eat seeds either. Now, we've got to presume that they're collecting the seeds to eat, because if they're this intelligent, would they really need to collect seeds? And why would they be seen collecting seeds from the area that they live, unless they've decided to live there because these seeds have some form of relevance or importance to their lives or their future? Now, all of this makes them vegetarians, but sticking with the mushrooms, that could make them our creators to a degree. Not like they fucking crafted us from dirt or in a genetic splicing facility located in the moon. Maybe they introduced our ancestors to psilocybin, magic mushrooms basically, or whatever the ancient equivalent was. Anyway, let's have a song. This is End Times by Zion I, Locksmith and Sirach. If Terence McKenna is to be believed, then Up until 2017, he wasn't supposedly believed by many scientists, but that was until Paul Stamets, which is kind of similar to a word to do with plants, with stamens, but it's not. It's like stamens, but without an N and with a T instead, Stamets. He was a mycologist who brought Terence McKenna's hypothesis into the limelight again. 17 years after McKenna's death, mind you. And just as a side note, though, I've always wondered if the reason why that TV psychologist or doctor or whatever the fuck he was, the McKenna man, McKenna man makes him sound like a superhero, but he was always on ITV in that one. He might have even been a magician, I'm not sure. But was this why he was popular? Was that just a way of getting everyone to associate the name McKenna with quitting smoking and hypnotism, rather than just thinking, yes, magic mushrooms are the reason why we can think. So, if they're watching the news in the morning and that, was that what was going on there? Just as a little side note, Anyway, the gist of this stoned ape theory, is that this is McKenna's theory, I think anyway. McKenna's famous for it. It's around 200,000 years ago, because it seems that the human brain power just doubled in size and in strength. And around that time, the Homo erectus evolved into Homo sapien, or maybe a better way to describe it is that when Homo sapiens seemed to go around the world killing anything ape-like that wasn't them, yet seemed a lot like them, which is what was supposedly going on at the time. It was a mass extinction event of sorts, but for everything except Homo sapiens, dogs, cats, basically anything that was remotely human, they fucking killed them all. Like, maybe it was the only ever true interspecies warfare. I mean, I know termites and ants fight, and you have them, like, kamikaze. Is kamikaze the right word? They go onto ant mounds and fucking make themselves explode so that they leak down and kill the ants. Or it's termites do that as ants invade the mound. I can't remember anyway, but fucking just watch an episode of QI to basically learn everything I already know. It was a mass genocide anyway, from some of the things I've read. Anyway, I don't know how much of the wars themselves, like I don't know what went on in them, but they would make a good cartoon though, to be fair. Like not the fucking termites and ants thing, but like think about how fucked up you could be with it as well. Like you've got all these humans, what look like humans, but they could all have like fucked up teeth and fucked up heads and stuff like that, and they could be fucking fighting each other with sticks and clubbing each other, and you could just have fucking really bad jokes and jokes about genocide, which you can't really make any jokes about genocide just day to day, can you? But if you did it in a cartoon that was purely about that, where it's about Homo sapiens and Homo erectus trying to kill each other 200,000 years ago, you could probably get away with that. Anyway, 200,000 years ago, as I say, Homo sapiens seemed to start showing the first indications of using tools, language, even like leaving art around the place. Now, Terence McKenna, and bear in mind I'm paraphrasing from a bunch of books that I've never even read the blurb of. He said that humans as we know them now migrated and started to ingest the flora of that area they migrated to, which he proposed was actually an ancient form of magic mushroom. And the reactions from these chemicals in the bodies of the Homo sapiens evolved the brain rapidly, in some cases almost instantly. But that's not that hard to believe, really, is it? Because I imagine if a group of people were to constantly ingest hallucinogens in a new environment, they would definitely see the world differently, because everything's already new to them anyway, and they're all off their faces, seeing things that aren't even there, but they're all seeing the same things that aren't there. So they would have, like, fucking shared little moments, and it would bring them closer together, and that would mean they would be able to progress as a society faster, and they'd have bonded quicker and deeper than the other tribes and of different creatures, of different Homo erectus and whatever the fuck else the others were. That's if, they didn't all end up fucking like properly paranoid, freaking out, and they're able to fathom out some new stuff. Because I imagine as well there's got to have been a few groups that did end up just really fucking paranoid because they're just hearing the whispers, and they're like, oh, for fuck's sake, like looking around and fucking seeing tigers coming out of places where there is no tigers. But either way, they'd wiped out all of the competitors, whatever it was that went on, and maybe the guilt though, like maybe they felt guilt at that point, and maybe that's where the paranoia and the whispers would come from for them, because they felt guilty. Maybe that's where Catholics get the concept of original sin and Catholic guilt from though, to be fair. If Terence McKenna is onto something, maybe that idea of Catholic guilt and original sin could come from that. They ate a plant that they weren't supposed to eat, which is what happens in the Bible. She eats from a tree she wasn't supposed to eat, doesn't she, Eve? Now, it's not to say that she wasn't supposed to eat it, like the Homo sapiens weren't supposed to eat it, but it didn't do them, potentially it might not have done them all that much good to eat it, but because a lot of them may have ended up paranoid and freaking out and worried about stuff and overthinking things. And it's something to bear in mind anyway. And another thing to bear in mind is that scientists and historians and anthropologists, they don't actually want an answer to any of this, because then that'd mean they'd be out of a job. They'd have to retrain as data analysts, police officers, call centre employees. They'd have no place in the modern world. But now that McKenna's been dead for a while, maybe they've had long enough to put his research and hypotheses, hypothemi, the plural of hypotheses. I don't know. Anyway, maybe they've put all that together, collated all that information together in such a way that could credit a lot of them, rather, or even their associations or their foundations, rather than just benefiting one bloke who just wanted to teach people stuff. And then they can be benefit even more financially because they can just fucking drip feed this information, slowly release this information to the public. Anyway, I have fucking lost myself, so we'll have another song. This is Dabbler and Ocean Wisdom with Get It. Right, getting back into the tall whites. A lot of the stories of them that I've found seem to stem from the 50s and 60s. And around that time there was a big hype about radiation. Now, what is weird is that the tall whites are said to glow. Well, the clothes that they wear were said to glow. Long, flowy robes, kind of like Jesus, and skin-tight outfits showing their body's structure. So is that why Jesus is always seen to be ripped? Because he was wearing a spacesuit all the time? And why he also had long hair, because, you know, the tall whites have long hair. And he was also described as white a lot of the time, even though he lived in a place where the odds of him being white were very, very much stacked against him. You know, in the whole sort of, you know, in the grand scheme of things, it's very unlikely that he would have been white. So it would make sense for him to be a tall white, wouldn't it? Also, the tall whites are said to have a species of alien that accompanies them, followers. Much like JC's disciples, except rather than being 11 people, one werewolf and a prostitute, the tall whites are said to be accompanied by a race known as the Greys. One woman describes them she was called Donna, the woman. It's tricky to know whether Donna should be believed, as she claims to have been in and out of sleep during the initial part of the encounter, but she claims that these lights followed her and her mates while they were driving, but whenever another vehicle would pass them or approach them, or if they'd pass a building or pass through a town, the pursuing lights would fall back, even to the point where they disappeared completely, only to reappear suddenly after they got out of a town and entered a wooded area. Donna received many predictions from these visitors, but what's really weird is a lot of stories about encounters with this species leaves a memory of bright double lights, or the memory of an oncoming truck approaching or chasing them. Donna would also receive messages in dreams from these people. They even introduced themselves to her just prior to her first visitation in the dream while she was asleep in the car as a friend was driving. Messages that sound a lot like hymns that I used to sing as a kid in school. Messages like, "Do not be afraid." Now, they would have put messages into Donna's head as well by placing her on objects that she said were made of solid light. Specifically, what she describes as a chair shaped like a chair. That's how she describes it. And to be honest, I can't knock that for descriptive ability, because, I mean, it lacks in imagination, but it adds weight to a story, because I studied chairs at university, and I can't describe a chair better than saying it looks like a chair, because they're designed ergonomically anyway, so a decent chair can only ever really look like a chair. And if it didn't look like a chair, then you wouldn't know to use it like a chair, so in a way it kind of wouldn't be ergonomic. And This may actually be the first ever time I've been able to use my degree in a professional manner, though, which is fucking stupid, really, and possibly a waste of 3 years. Anyway, a little moment to myself there. She says that she knew that the chair was to be sat on because the so-called creators could message her like telepathically to instruct her to sit on it. So I was thinking, what if these lights some form of shadow, Like, shadows in our dimension are dark, but what if these creatures or their technology leaves a shadow that's created from light in our dimension? It's a long shot, and I don't know if that's at all possible, but realistically, would a 2D organism believe that the darkness is from the shape of something in another dimension? You know, like, if there was something living in one of our shadows, like it was in the 2D dimension, would that realistically be able to think, oh, this darkness here is made by something unfathomable to me? You wouldn't be able to describe it, would you, or imagine it, just in the same way that we might not be able to explain why these chairs were made of light. I mean, it's a possibility, isn't it? Maybe there's some little weirdo sat in a small square of a floor plan talking into a microphone under, well, it wouldn't be underneath the stairs, would it? Like I say, just be in the corner of a fucking blueprint. And he's taking the piss out of whatever they perceive to be in the one dimension thing, talking about whatever their shadows are. Their shadows might be sounds, they might hear shadows in the second dimension. What if the dimensions, though, actually are just some form of reference to the worlds that the Hopi speak of, the Hopi being the Native Americans? Now, they said to view time itself in cycles, and in these previous cycles, there was the first world that was engulfed in flame by volcanoes and comets, the second world that was destroyed by ice, and the third world that gets us our weekly mention of Noah. Actually, I think that's the first mention of Noah this week. And I wanted to shock you all by working out that Noah was, like, I took a moment when I looked up to try and find if there was a thing for Noah, you know, like chemicals speaking, so like NOAH or something that could make a chemical, and if that chemical was white, and then, oh yeah, that white bit there is the tall whites, but I'm either not smart enough or there's nothing obvious for it. But it is weird though, isn't it, that Noah or Gilgamesh, it keeps getting brought up again and again and again each week. The fourth world is supposed to be ravaged by wind and wars, and we're supposed to be in the fourth world now, which makes me think nuclear blasts though, the wind, because the blast of the shockwave, that would be like wind, wouldn't it, and that would destroy fucking everything. Now, all these cataclysms are said to have come about because of mankind's lack of connection with Mother Nature, and simultaneously ignoring the views and wants of the so-called creator, which I guess could be the tall whites, or maybe Anu, I guess, to bring back another reference from another week. Weirder still is I found a reference to the sun god. Now, there was a Hopi that gave a talk to some people, which is not great evidence, I'll be honest with you, but it's some form of evidence. And if you take what he said literally, then from the engraving on the wall where they were speaking, if you put your back to it, supposedly you're perfectly angled for the sunrise on the summer solstice to be dead in front of you at that particular part of the world. And there was mention of the sun god being the strongest there in that position. The sun god can be his strongest in that position there, which kind of ties in Jesus, because Jesus is linked to Ra, who was the sun god, and Enki or Enlil, whichever one of them was supposed to also be Ra. I always forget which one. Another Doctor Who reference, though, is that, like I mentioned Doctor Who before, innit? Fucking the Mayans. So the Mayans were said to be the people of time, and the Hopi are said to be the masters of space. But the Mayans started to measure time differently according to what I've been reading, and I'm not even going to fucking pretend to understand the stuff I've read about there. I would like to do an episode on it, but honestly, from what I was reading, I read about 45 minutes of stuff on this, and I have not got a fucking clue what I read. It's all about how they started measuring time slightly differently, which made their years longer. Like, as in, it made the years longer but less days, and that threw me. And I kept trying to go back over it and over it, but maybe I've completely misunderstood it. Fuck knows. But interestingly, though, there are a species of creature that are thought to be able to survive any type of cataclysm. And there's even an episode about them on South Park. They're called tardigrades, a small organism that I imagine after like millions of years could potentially evolve into whatever life form would be suitable to survive on the world in the fifth iteration of Earth. Unless like 4 is the last one. Like what the Matrix was supposed to end on the third one, wasn't it? But now they're bringing out the fourth Matrix, and it's going to end on the fourth. So maybe if that goes well, they'll bring out a fifth. Maybe that's all the Earth is. They just keep bringing out sequels. They're like, oh, we did quite well. It's trailing off. We'll cut it off for a bit, and then we'll bring it back when people have forgotten what was going on in it, or people have made up what was going on in it. Anyway, the Hopi are said to have 2 beliefs of what will happen to the world when this cataclysm does come. So the world will either follow that of the 2 hearts, or follow that of the singular heart? Now again, I'm not even going to pretend to understand it, but I did try to see if there was any creatures that do have two hearts. And there's not. Octopi have three, which is weird. Earthworms have got 5, and a hagfish, which I fully recommend you Google because I think these things will be the fucking detriment of humanity. They've got 4, but they're not like proper hearts apparently. But the singular heart path has something to do with soil, and so do earthworms, so take from that what you will. But you know what does have 2 hearts? Time Lords, mate, like in Doctor Who. And the rest of the Gallifreyans, you know, all of the Time Lords, they've all got 2 hearts. A race which is constantly warring. And there are lots of stories in this type of circle about an age-long battle between dark and light. And these tall whites literally glow. So it'd be somewhat safe to assume that they're the light side. And maybe the negativity draining invisible creatures are the dark, because the Daleks in Doctor Who, for example, they can't be seen, and they're always in the dark because they're the octopus creature that's trapped inside the robot bit in it, the machine. And octopi have more than one heart, which kind of looks like a Dalek. I know it's a stretch, but maybe that's why Doctor Who came out, because someone was trying to teach us about the tall whites. Maybe that's what TV is. Maybe TV was made so we could watch stuff like Doctor Who and get these ideas and learn about all this and get ready. But there's another theory I've got, and a lot of what I read suggested that our technology is a step away from nature. So what if the 2 hearts is more like a symbol of 2 lives, a real life and a fake life? Maybe like a real life outside and a life simulated within the internet, maybe. Now, before we finish, I reckon it's worth mentioning a lady called Miriam Delicado, a woman that claims that the tall whites had a hand in creating mankind. So what if just taking just that brief little bit of what I've said there, what if tall whites are the reason why Homo sapiens won their war, or why the Homo sapiens migrated, or why they even ate the magic mushrooms? These stories can kind of be tied to the Bible too, because you've got the migration with Moses and the burning bush that leads to the messages that, off the top of my head, led to the 10 Commandments that he heard in his head. Some people have also connected the bushes in this area of the world with releasing DMT, which gives it all a bit of credence. I've always wondered if the idea of Moses splitting the water as well, you know, and passing through is more like a portal being opened, kind of like the Bifrost in the Marvel films, just to make it easy to imagine. And that's kind of Nordic too. Imagine that more when Moses split the water, that it was actually just opening up the Bifrost. I know there must be a better way to describe it other than saying he split the sea. They might not have had a better way to describe it back then, as rather than saying he split the sea, because in Genesis as well it says that God divided the waters to create earth. So it would make sense that the waters were more than just a sea. You know, it's just something to leave, you know, with a nice little brain tickler as we go into our afternoons, you know. And that's it, guys. That's it, we fucking blasted through that one, haven't we? I'm going to be dead honest, you know. I thought I was going to get about 5 or 6 songs in here, but I have gotten lost a few times, and I'm honestly, before I've edited this down and added the songs, I don't know how many songs are going to be in this. So later on today, we've got HDR at 4. I think we might have Jim'll mix it later on. We might not, because he's been ill this week, but I'm saying he's there anyway, just in case, you know. I'm not too sure, but he might be. And hopefully tomorrow, we've got me and Jimmy chatting shit in Truth Seeking. That'll be Conspiracy Jim and Tinfoil Jack tomorrow at 7 o'clock live. But if not, go and find one of the pre-recorded ones from the weeks before. Give them a listen. And I'll fucking see you in a bit.
If you enjoyed the show, join me Patreon. You can get a free trial on there where you can get access to daily updates. Paranoid. No, I don't want to say paranoid delusions in it, because there's nothing that makes it sound like I'm not very well. But I feel like I'm doing alright, sort of, at the minute. So, not in that sense, just other people would deem it paranoid. But if you're into this, like tall whites and that, and you're into your aliens and, you know, your magic and stuff like that, like real world magic, not like Harry Potter and no shit like that. I don't talk about stuff like that on there, just actual magic, you know, like the stuff that people do in the world, supposedly. I feel like that I can read on the internet and watch YouTube videos about. Things like that, things that I think about like that and I get worried about. And you could have watched the video episode of this. I mean, you still can if you've already had it. If you don't had enough of this, you want to watch the video version, go to my Patreon. You can watch that for the pound version. But if you take the free trial at $3.50 or £3, it's the same thing, but it's just different in different currencies, which doesn't even work out properly, really, which is annoying. I'm getting distracted anyway. Join me Patreon, mate. If you enjoyed this, join it. You might as well do the free trial and see what you think. You get discount codes for things on my website. You get bonus episodes. I'm currently working my way through an antique book that I've got called The World's Strangest Crimes, where I analyse it as we go through and we see what's going on back in 1967, when some guy's writing about stuff that happened in the late 1800s and early 1900s, completely ignoring World War II as well, it seems. Recently we covered something called the Sawney Beans, which was a group of people. Well, I say a group of people, don't think you could really call them people. Basically, this guy kept fucking this woman to birth these kids, and then they had inbred kids with those kids, and them kids had inbred kids with each other, and they all lived in a cave, mate. And then they just hunted people in Scotland, dragged them into the cave, butchered them, pickled the flesh, brined the flesh, hung them up to dry in the cave, and that went on for 20 odd years until, they got caught. Won't spoil it, everything that happens to them. But if you want to hear that, mate, go over to my Patreon and have a listen. Anyway, I'll let you go. Thank you for listening and that. Give us a rating on here. Join the Patreon. Share this with a mate, if you thought it was any good, that'd help. All the sort of stuff that you think, would that help the guy? Would that help more people hear this? If I do this, will more people listen to this? And will Jack from the world around you earn a couple more fractions of a penny from advertising on the podcasts? If you think yes to that, do it, lad. Do it. It might help. Or fucking thank you for listening. Or fucking see you in a bit, mate.